My name is Naomi Carter. I am 41 years old, a black woman who has spent enough years behind a grocery store checkout counter to understand something most people never realize. When you work a job like mine, you become invisible. Customers look through you, not at you. They see prices, bags, receipts. Rarely a person. I've learned to live inside that invisibility, to move quietly through my shifts, memorizing the rhythm of beeping scanners and the soft rustle of plastic bags, letting the hours pass without expecting anything unusual to happen. That afternoon started like any other. The store smelled of disinfectant and overripe bananas. Fluorescent lights hummed above my head, too bright, too white, flattening every face that passed through my lane. I stood on my feet, 8 hours into a 10-hour shift, back aching, smile practiced, mind somewhere else entirely. I was thinking about the house I'd moved into 3 months earlier, the one on Cedar Hollow Road. Cheap rent. Too quiet. The kind of place people described as a good deal without ever explaining why. The house had a basement. I hadn't gone down there yet. Not because I was afraid, exactly. Just because something about it made me pause every time I opened the door at the top of the stairs. A heaviness. A stale smell that didn't belong to mold or dust. The kind of feeling that makes your body hesitate even when your mind tells you there's no reason to. I scanned another cart of groceries. Bread. Milk. Canned soup. Routine. Predictable. Then she stepped into my line. She was older, maybe late 60s or early 70s, with deep brown skin and eyes so sharp they seemed to cut through the noise of the store. Her hair was wrapped in a faded scarf, and she leaned heavily on the cart as if her bones had grown tired of carrying her. She didn't smile. She didn't look at her phone. She watched me. People like that make you uneasy without doing anything wrong. I greeted her anyway. Good afternoon. She nodded once. As I scanned her items, I noticed her hands. Long fingers. Calloused. The hands of someone who had worked with them for a very long time. When she reached into her purse for her wallet, I caught a glimpse of something on the back of her hand. A small symbol. Simple. Circular. Almost like it had been burned into the skin years ago and faded with time. I felt a strange chill crawl up my arms, though the store was warm. Her total came up on the screen. I told her the amount. She paid in cash, slow and deliberate, as if each movement mattered. When I handed her the receipt, our fingers brushed. She leaned closer. Close enough that I could smell peppermint on her breath. And in a voice so low I almost thought I imagined it, she said. When I call you, check the basement. I froze. The scanner beeped behind me. Someone cleared their throat in the next lane. The world kept moving, but for a moment, I didn't. I'm sorry. I whispered. But she was already straightening up, already turning her cart toward the exit like nothing had happened. No hesitation. No explanation. I watched her disappear through the automatic doors, my heart pounding harder than it should have. That night, when I got home, the house felt different. Quieter. The air heavier, like it was holding its breath. I stood at the top of the basement stairs, hand on the doorframe, remembering her words. When I call you. Not if. When. I didn't go down. I turned off the lights, locked the door, and went to bed, telling myself it was nothing. Just an old woman saying something strange. Just a coincidence. But as I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, I realized something that made sleep impossible. I had never told anyone at that store where I lived. And yet, somehow, she knew I had a basement. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my back, staring into the darkness, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the house settling around me. Every creak in the walls felt intentional, Every whisper of wind against the windows sounded like footsteps stopping just outside. I told myself it was my imagination, that fear has a way of filling empty spaces when you let it, but my body refused to relax. My heart stayed alert, as if it knew something my mind wasn't ready to accept yet. Around 3 in the morning, I heard it. A soft thump. Not upstairs. Not outside. Below me. The sound was dull, muted, like something heavy shifting on concrete. I held my breath, counting the seconds between sounds, waiting for it to happen again. It didn't. The silence that followed was worse. I sat up in bed, the sheets tangled around my legs, my pulse racing. I almost laughed at myself. Old houses make noise. Everyone knows that. Still, I didn't go back to sleep. Morning came slowly. Gray light crept through the curtains, washing the room in a lifeless color that matched the way I felt. I dragged myself out of bed, made coffee I barely tasted, and stood at the kitchen sink staring out at the yard. A thin layer of dirt clung to the basement windows, half buried in the ground. From the outside, they looked like blind eyes staring back at me. I avoided them. At work, I tried to lose myself in routine. The steady beep of the scanner. The mindless repetition. But my focus kept slipping. Every older woman who passed through my lane made my chest tighten. Every voice behind me made me turn too quickly. I checked my phone more times than I could count, half expecting to see a missed call from an unknown number. There was nothing. By the time my shift ended, my nerves were shot. I considered driving straight to my sister's place across town, sleeping on her couch, pretending none of this was happening. But pride has a way of keeping you in places you should leave. So I went home. The house greeted me with silence. Too much silence. I dropped my bag on the kitchen table and stood there, keys still in my hand, listening. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. I told myself this was the moment to prove I wasn't scared. The basement door was only a few steps away, at the end of the narrow hallway. I walked toward it slowly, my footsteps sounding louder than they should have. I reached for the handle. My phone rang. I jumped, a sharp gasp escaping my throat. My heart slammed against my ribs as I pulled the phone from my pocket. The screen showed a number I didn't recognize. No name. No picture. Just numbers. My fingers hovered over the screen. For a brief, foolish moment, I thought about ignoring it. But the memory of her voice, "When I call you," wrapped around my spine like ice. I answered. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end. No breathing. No background noise. Just a hollow, empty pause that stretched on long enough to make my skin prickle. Then a voice spoke. Low. Calm. Familiar. "Naomi," the woman said, pronouncing my name perfectly. "It's time." My mouth went dry. "Time for what?" "To look," she replied. But not alone. Before I could ask what she meant, the call ended. I stood there in the hallway, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the basement door. My reflection stared back at me from the dark wood, eyes wide, face pale despite my skin. I realized then that this wasn't curiosity anymore. This was an invitation. And whether I accepted it or not, something was already waiting for me downstairs. I stood frozen in the hallway long after the call ended, my phone still pressed to my ear like it might start speaking again on its own. The screen had already gone dark, the number gone with it, leaving no trace that the conversation had ever happened. That scared me more than if the call had continued. Proof would have meant logic. Evidence. Something I could explain away. This felt intentional. I lowered the phone slowly and looked at the basement door. It had always been there, unremarkable, painted the same dull off-white as the walls, its brass knob slightly tarnished with age. I had walked past it dozens of times since moving in. Ignored it. Avoided it. Pretended it didn't exist. Now it felt like the only thing in the house that mattered. But not alone, she had said. I didn't understand what that meant, but my body reacted before my mind could catch up. I locked the front door. Then the back door. I checked the windows, one by one, pulling the curtains tight, as if that would somehow seal me inside a version of reality where nothing strange happened. My hands shook the entire time. I considered calling someone. My sister. A friend. Even the police. But how would I explain it without sounding unhinged? An old woman from the grocery store called me and told me to check my basement. I could already hear the silence on the other end of that conversation. So instead, I did the thing I'd always done when life made me uncomfortable. I handled it alone. I grabbed a flashlight from the junk drawer in the kitchen. It flickered when I turned it on, the beam weak but steady enough to pretend it would help. I stood at the top of the basement stairs, breathing slowly, counting each inhale like my therapist had taught me years ago. The door creaked softly when I pushed it open, the sound loud in the quiet house. Cold air rushed up to meet me. Not cool. Cold. The smell hit next, damp earth, old wood, something metallic underneath it all. I hesitated on the first step, shining the flashlight downward. The stairs disappeared into shadow, the light barely reaching the bottom. The walls were unfinished concrete, streaked with dark stains that looked too deliberate to be water damage. I took another step. Then another. With every step, the temperature dropped. My breath fogged in front of my face. By the time my feet touched the basement floor, my fingers were numb, wrapped tight around the flashlight like it was the only thing anchoring me to the surface. The beam swept across the room. Boxes stacked against the walls. Old furniture covered in sheets. A workbench in the corner cluttered with tools I didn't recognize. Everything looked abandoned, forgotten, like it had been sealed in time. And yet, the air didn't feel stale. It felt watched. I moved deeper into the basement, my footsteps echoing softly. The flashlight caught something scratched into the concrete wall near the back. At first, I thought it was graffiti. But when I got closer, my stomach dropped. It was the same symbol I had seen on the woman's hand. A circle. Carved deep. Old, but not ancient. My chest tightened. What is this? I whispered, my voice swallowed by the room. That's when I heard it again. The thump. This time, it wasn't beneath me. It was behind me. I spun around, flashlight swinging wildly, heart slamming so hard it hurt. The beam landed on the far corner of the basement, illuminating a door I had never noticed before. Smaller than the one at the top of the stairs. Darker. The wood warped, the frame cracked like it had been forced open more than once. Something moved on the other side. Slow. Heavy. I backed away, my heel catching on something hard. I stumbled, nearly falling, and the flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering across the concrete floor. The darkness rushed in instantly, thick and suffocating. Naomi, a voice said softly from the shadows. Not the old woman's. A man's. And that was the moment I understood what she meant. I was never meant to come down here by myself. The basement was silent again, but the silence felt different now, thicker, heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. I scrambled to pick up the flashlight, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Every movement seemed amplified in the darkness, my own heartbeat echoing against the concrete walls like a warning drum. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but at the same time, there was no turning back. I had already descended, and curiosity, reckless, foolish curiosity, pulled me further. The small door at the back of the basement didn't budge at first when I reached for it. My fingers traced the warped wood, following the cracks and scratches that marked it, and I felt the faintest vibration beneath my touch. It was almost imperceptible, but I sensed it. The room on the other side wasn't empty. Whatever lived there, or whatever had been left there, was aware I had arrived. I swallowed hard, trying to force calm into my shaking body, and whispered, "Hello?" The sound barely carried. My voice felt inadequate, like speaking in this space was a joke, a futile attempt to reach someone, or something, that existed beyond comprehension. The door finally creaked open, slow and deliberate. I took a step back instinctively, heart hammering in my chest. The beam from the flashlight cut a narrow path across the room inside, revealing nothing at first. Just more darkness. Shadows that seemed to cling to the corners, stretching and pulling at the edges of the light. My breath was shallow, misting in the cold air. Then I saw it, a faint shimmer, like silk brushing against concrete, moving just slightly, as though disturbed by my presence. I blinked, unsure if my eyes were playing tricks on me, but it wasn't gone. It had shape. It had intent. I moved closer, each step deliberate, my senses on high alert. The smell hit me before I could fully process the visual, the same damp earth, metallic tang, but sharper, more pungent, like iron in fresh rain. My stomach churned. My fingers, still gripping the flashlight, trembled. And then I heard it again, the whisper. Low, deliberate, almost teasing, like something, was testing me. Naomi, the name lingered in the air, curling around me, sticking to my skin. I froze, the sound vibrating through my chest, resonating in a way that made my bones ache. I swallowed hard and whispered back, even though I knew no answer would satisfy. "Who's there?" My voice wavered. It had been so long since I'd spoken aloud without the safety of another human nearby. Silence answered me first, then a shuffle, then a sigh that sounded impossibly old, impossibly heavy. And suddenly, the shimmer moved closer, definite now, no question in my mind. It was a shape, humanoid, but distorted in ways I couldn't describe, moving with purpose. My heart nearly stopped, my feet rooted to the spot. "Check the walls," the voice whispered again, softer this time, almost coaxing. It was the woman's voice, or maybe it was just my mind borrowing her tone. I didn't know. All I knew was that I had no choice. My fingers traced along the cold concrete, brushing over the scratches and symbols until I found something different, a small, hidden panel, nearly invisible, carved into the wall. The edges were rough, splintered, as if it had been forced open before. My pulse was deafening. The air seemed to tighten around me, suffocating. I gritted my teeth and pushed it. Inside, I found a small stack of papers, yellowed and brittle with age. The top one had handwriting I didn't recognize, neat, deliberate, almost formal. I unfolded it carefully, trying not to tear it. The words seemed ordinary at first, names, dates, places. But as I read, my blood ran cold. The dates, some were decades old. The names, some familiar, some long forgotten. And then, a single line stood out, written in a hurried scrawl: "Do not ignore the warning. She watches everything." My hands froze over the paper. I realized then, with a sinking feeling in my gut, that I was not here by accident. The woman at the checkout hadn't called me for no reason. Everything I had done, every step I had taken, had been guided by someone, or something, watching me, waiting for me to arrive. My chest tightened. My breath hitched. And just when I thought I might finally understand, a shadow fell over the flashlight beam. Something large, impossibly large, moving slowly from the corner of the basement. I couldn't see it fully, only glimpses, edges of limbs, folds of shadow, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty: I was not alone, and whatever it was, it had been expecting me. I don't know how long I stood there in that basement, frozen in place, staring at the shadow that had slipped into the edge of the flashlight's beam. Time stopped behaving the way it was supposed to. Seconds stretched, collapsed, then stretched again, like the house itself was bending reality around me. My arms ached from holding the flashlight so tightly, but I was afraid that if I relaxed even a little, something terrible would happen, like whatever was watching me would take that as permission. The shadow didn't rush me. That was the worst part. It stayed just far enough away to let my imagination do the damage. It shifted slowly, subtly, never fully revealing itself, as if it understood something about fear that I didn't. Fear grows best when it's fed slowly. I took a shallow breath, the air cold and metallic in my lungs, and tried to remind myself that shadows aren't proof. Darkness creates shapes. Fear fills in the rest. But then the floor creaked. Not under my feet. Behind me. I spun around, the flashlight beam shaking as it swept across the basement. Nothing. Just boxes. Concrete. The door at the top of the stairs, still closed. Still locked. I checked it instinctively, my hand trembling as I twisted the knob. Locked. My stomach dropped. I hadn't locked it behind me. The realization settled over me like a weight. Heavy. Suffocating. This wasn't just a strange house with a strange basement anymore. Something here was making decisions without me. Something had noticed my presence and adjusted accordingly. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the vibration so sudden I almost screamed. I fumbled it out, nearly dropping it onto the concrete. One bar of signal flickered on the screen. A voicemail notification appeared, timestamped just 1 minute ago. I didn't remember missing a call. With shaking fingers, I pressed play. The woman's voice filled the basement, low and steady, as if she were standing right beside me. "You opened the door," she said. "I told you not to do that yet." My chest tightened. "You didn't tell me anything," I whispered. My voice sounded small in the vast, unfinished space. "You just told me to check the basement." There was a pause on the recording. I could hear her breathing. "I told you what you were ready to hear," she said finally. "And now you need to listen carefully, Naomi. Because this house doesn't belong to you the way you think it does." A cold wave washed through me. Then who does it belong to? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she said something that made my knees weaken. "It belongs to what was left behind." The voicemail ended. At the same moment, the light flickered. Once. Twice. Then it went out. The flashlight beam died in my hand, plunging the basement into total darkness. I shook it violently, smacked it against my palm, panic rising fast and sharp in my chest. Nothing. The battery had been nearly new. It shouldn't have failed. I stood there blind, my senses screaming, trying to orient myself by sound alone. My breathing was too loud. I forced myself to slow it, afraid whatever else was down there would hear me. In the darkness, I became acutely aware of every sensation, the cold seeping through the soles of my shoes, the rough concrete brushing my fingertips as I reached out, the faint vibration under my feet, like something moving far below. Then I heard it. A voice. Not whispered. Not distant. Right next to me. "You came back," it said softly. I staggered backward, my shoulders slamming into the wall. "Who are you?" I demanded, though my voice cracked on the last word. There was a sound like a slow inhale. "I've been here longer than you," the voice replied. Longer than her. Her. The woman at the store. The realization hit me all at once. She wasn't the center of this. She was just a gatekeeper. A warning sign I'd ignored too many times to count. My phone vibrated again. A text message appeared on the screen, glowing faintly in the dark. "Look at the floor." I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me not to obey. But curiosity, The same dangerous pull that had brought me down here in the first place, won again. I lowered my gaze. The concrete beneath my feet wasn't solid. Thin cracks spidered outward from where I stood, forming a rough outline. A shape. A door. Smaller than the one upstairs. Older. Hidden beneath years of dust and neglect. Something had been sealed under the basement floor. And it was directly beneath me. The voice beside me spoke again, closer now. You were supposed to forget, it said. That's what they wanted. That's why they chose you. My heart hammered painfully against my ribs. Chose me for what? There was a pause. Then the voice answered, quiet but unmistakably certain. To remember. The floor creaked under my weight. And somewhere deep beneath the concrete, something knocked back. The knock beneath the floor wasn't loud. That's what made it unbearable. It was slow. Deliberate. As if whatever was down there understood exactly how much pressure the sound would put on my nerves without pushing me into panic too quickly. One knock. Then silence. Then another. Each one felt like a question I wasn't ready to answer. I stepped back instinctively, my heel scraping against the concrete. The cracks in the floor seemed darker now, more defined, like they had been waiting for my weight to activate them. My phone was the only source of light, its screen dimming as the battery drained faster than it should have. I crouched, brushing dust away with trembling fingers, tracing the outline of the hidden door embedded beneath years of neglect. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't poor construction or some forgotten renovation. This was intentional. You don't have to open it yet, the voice beside me said calmly. I couldn't see whoever, or whatever, it belonged to, but I could feel the presence now, close enough that the air around me felt warmer, heavier. But you need to understand why it's there. I swallowed hard. Then tell me. A soft sound followed. Almost a laugh. They buried what they couldn't explain, the voice said. And when that wasn't enough, they buried the memory too. Images began to press against the back of my mind, uninvited and sharp. A narrow hallway. The smell of bleach. A woman crying behind a closed door. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting them, but the harder I resisted, the stronger they came. I don't remember, I whispered. You do, the voice corrected. You just learned how not to. The basement seemed to shift, the walls creaking as if settling into a new shape. I realized then that the house wasn't reacting to my presence. It was responding to my awareness. The more I noticed, the more it revealed. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. The floor isn't the only thing they sealed. My chest tightened. Who is they? I asked, my voice hoarse. There was a long pause before the answer came. Your parents, the voice said quietly. The word hit harder than I expected. Parents. The people who raised me. Protected me. The ones I trusted enough to believe when they told me certain things were better left alone. No, I said automatically. They wouldn't. They already did, the voice interrupted. And they convinced you it was kindness. The memory sharpened. A doctor's office. A clipboard. My mother's hand gripping mine too tightly. A man in a white coat saying words like trauma and adjustment and necessary. I sank down onto the concrete floor, my legs no longer willing to hold me up. My head throbbed, a dull pressure building behind my eyes like something pushing outward. What did they seal? I asked. The voice didn't answer immediately. Instead, the knocking beneath the floor came again. This time, faster. More urgent. You, the voice said finally. And her. Her. The word echoed in my chest. A sudden, vivid image flashed through my mind, Two small hands pressed flat against cold concrete from opposite sides. Mine. And another. Identical in shape. Identical in size. My breath caught painfully in my throat. I was never alone, I whispered. No, the voice said gently. You were separated. The floor shifted again, a low grinding sound rolling through the basement. Dust fell from the ceiling, stinging my eyes. I scrambled to my feet, panic surging, as a thin seam appeared along the outline of the hidden door. Something underneath was moving. Pushing upward. Trying to be heard. My phone vibrated one last time before the screen went black. The final message burned itself into my memory before it disappeared. If you open it, you can't undo what comes back. The seam in the floor widened. And from below, a familiar voice, one that sounded impossibly young and impossibly close, spoke my name like a promise. Naomi. Hearing my name spoken from beneath the floor didn't feel like fear at first. It felt like recognition. Like something inside my chest had finally lined up with something outside my body. I stood there, frozen, staring at the widening seam in the concrete, my thoughts splintering in a dozen directions at once. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run, to turn around, climb the stairs, leave the house, never come back. But my feet refused to move. They felt rooted, as if the basement itself had decided where I belonged. Naomi, the voice said again, softer this time. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't angry. It sounded tired. I dropped to my knees without realizing I was doing it, my palms pressing flat against the cold floor. The concrete vibrated faintly beneath my skin, a subtle hum that traveled up my arms and settled deep in my bones. My breathing came fast and shallow, each inhale scraping my lungs raw. Who are you? I whispered, though some part of me already knew the answer. There was a pause, long enough for my heart to start racing again. Then the voice replied, steady and aching. I'm the part of you they didn't know how to fix. The words cracked something open inside me. Memories didn't come flooding back all at once. They leaked. Slow and painful. Like water seeping through a damaged wall. Flashes of images pressed behind my eyes, small hands holding onto each other in the dark, the smell of mildew and bleach, whispered promises made between children who didn't understand why the world above them felt so far away. I tried to keep you, the voice continued. But they chose you. My head throbbed violently. I squeezed my eyes shut, shaking my head. No, I said. I would remember something like this. I would remember you. Another vibration rippled through the floor. They made sure you wouldn't, the voice said. They called it treatment. That word, treatment, dragged a sharp memory to the surface. A white room. Too bright. A man speaking gently while writing things down. My mother crying quietly in the corner, telling me everything would be okay if I just listened. If I just forgot. I pressed my fist to my mouth to keep from screaming. They said I was confused, I whispered. They said I had imaginary friends. The voice beneath me let out a slow, shaky breath. That's what they called me, it said. Imaginary. Easier than admitting they failed both of us. My stomach twisted painfully. Why am I hearing you now? I asked. Why now? Because you came back, the voice replied. Because you walked into the place they buried the truth. And because she finally found you. She? I echoed. The temperature in the basement dropped suddenly, my breath fogging the air again. The woman at the store, the voice said. She was like us once. A long time ago. The pieces began to connect in my mind, forming a picture I didn't want to see. The symbol carved into the wall. The certainty in her voice. The way she had looked at me, not like a stranger, but like someone checking to see if I was ready. She remembered, the voice continued. They couldn't make her forget. So they let her go. And she's been watching ever since. Watching for what? I asked. For someone strong enough to come back, the voice said. Someone who could open the door without breaking. The seam in the floor widened another inch, a low grinding sound echoing through the basement. Dust puffed into the air, making me cough. I scrambled backward, heart pounding, staring at the dark gap forming beneath my knees. I don't understand, I said desperately. What happens if I open it? The voice hesitated. That depends, it said quietly. On whether you're opening it to run, or to stay. My throat tightened. Stay where? With me, the voice answered. The realization hit me all at once, sharp and merciless. This wasn't just about memory. It wasn't just about truth. This was about replacement. The house creaked above us, a deep, groaning sound like an old body shifting in its sleep. I imagined the rooms upstairs, the kitchen, the bedroom, the front door I had locked so carefully. All of it suddenly felt far away, like a life that might already be slipping out of reach. I built a life up there, I whispered. I can't just. I know, the voice said gently. That's why they chose you instead of me. The floor shifted again, and for the first time, fingers, real fingers, pressed up through the widening gap, pale and trembling, searching blindly for the surface. They said one of us had to disappear, the voice continued. And you were better at pretending. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at the hand emerging from the darkness. It looked like mine. Same shape. Same scars. Same life, split in two. Above me, something moved. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Coming from the top of the stairs. And a familiar voice drifted down into the basement, calm and unwavering. Naomi, the woman from the checkout said. You have to decide now. The sound of her footsteps on the stairs changed everything. They weren't rushed. They weren't hesitant. They were steady. Certain. Like someone walking through a place they knew well, like someone who had walked these steps many times before. The woman from the checkout emerged slowly from the shadows at the top of the basement stairs, her figure framed by the faint light spilling down from above. She didn't look old down here. Not fragile. Not tired. The years seemed to fall away from her as she descended, one hand resting lightly on the railing, her eyes fixed on me with a focus that made my skin prickle. Don't touch the floor yet, she said calmly. It reacts to fear. My hands were still planted against the concrete. I pulled them back slowly, wiping my palms against my jeans without realizing it. The fingers reaching up from the gap below twitched, then froze, as if listening. As if waiting. You followed me, I said, my voice barely steady. You came to my job. You called me. You knew my name. Why? She stopped a few steps away from the bottom, close enough that I could see the symbol clearly now, etched into the back of her hand. It wasn't just a mark. It was scar tissue. Old. Intentional. Because you're the first one who came back willingly, she said. Most people don't. Came back to what? I demanded. This house. This basement. She shook her head slowly. No. To the memory. The basement seemed to lean inward, the walls creaking softly as if straining to hear us. The hand beneath the floor flexed again, fingers scraping gently against the concrete edge. That's her, I said hoarsely. Isn't it? The woman nodded once. She's what happens when forgetting doesn't work, she said. When the mind survives, but the truth doesn't. My chest felt too tight. You said she was my sister. You were twins, she corrected. Identical. But not interchangeable. The word interchangeable hit me like a punch. They told you she was imaginary because it was easier than admitting what they did, the woman continued. One child terrified them. Two terrified them more. Especially when the house started responding. The house keeps reacting, I said. Like it's alive. She didn't argue. Some places remember better than people, she replied. This one was built over something unfinished. It doesn't like loose ends. The fingers beneath the floor curled tighter around the edge, knuckles whitening. I didn't leave her on purpose, I whispered. I was a child. I know, the woman said softly. That's why you were chosen to live. I looked up at her sharply. Chosen by who? She hesitated for the first time. By the house, she said. And by your parents. Sometimes those decisions overlap. The basement felt suddenly smaller, the ceiling lower, the air heavier. My memories pressed closer now, no longer flashes but fragments with weight, my mother's hands shaking, my father refusing to meet my eyes, the sound of a door closing below my feet while someone cried my name. She never stopped calling you, the woman said. Even after you forgot. The hand beneath the floor moved again, pushing higher now, wrist visible through the gap. The skin was pale, stretched thin, but unmistakably human. I don't want to take her place, I said, tears streaming freely now. I just want to leave. The woman studied me for a long moment. You can, she said. But you won't leave alone. What does that mean? She stepped aside slightly, revealing something I hadn't noticed before, a second door behind her, hidden in the shadows of the stairwell. Smaller. Narrower. Sealed with the same symbol carved into the wall downstairs. That door closes one story, she said. And opens another. The house groaned, a deep, rolling sound that traveled up the walls and into the floorboards above. The gap in the concrete widened another inch, the hand reaching higher now, trembling not with anger, but desperation. She doesn't want your life, the woman said quietly. She wants your memory. She wants to be known. I looked at the hand. Then at the door. Then back at the woman. If I choose wrong, I said, what happens? The woman met my gaze, her eyes steady and unflinching. Then the house chooses for you. The fingers beneath the floor tightened their grip. And from below, my sister's voice rose again, no longer whispering. Naomi, she said. Please. The word please shattered something inside me. It wasn't fear that overwhelmed me then. It was grief. Grief for something I had lost before I ever understood what it was. Grief for a version of myself that had been allowed to live only because another version had been erased. I stared at the hand reaching up through the concrete, my sister's hand, trembling not with rage but with exhaustion, and I understood for the first time that she wasn't trying to escape. She was trying to be seen. I didn't know, I said, my voice breaking. I swear I didn't know. I know, she replied softly. That's why this hurts. The house responded to our voices, the walls creaking in long, drawn-out groans, like an old body shifting in its sleep. The basement felt warmer now, the cold replaced by a heavy, suffocating closeness. Dust drifted down from the ceiling in thin clouds, catching in my throat, making every breath feel deliberate and labored. The woman on the stairs watched silently, her presence steady, almost reverent, as if she were witnessing a ritual she had waited decades to see completed. You have more time than most, she said finally. But not much. I looked at her sharply. Time for what? To decide what you're willing to carry, she replied. Memory is weight. So is forgetting. The house doesn't care which one you choose, only that the balance is restored. The word settled into me slowly, painfully. Balance. One life above. One life below. That's not balance, I whispered. That's punishment. The woman's eyes softened. It's inheritance. The floor shifted again, the crack widening enough now that I could see my sister's face through the opening. Pale. Familiar. Older than the memories I had of her, yet unchanged in a way that made my chest ache. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw not accusation, but longing. "I don't want to take anything from you," she said. "I just don't want to disappear again." The sentence hollowed me out. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling my heart race, my pulse loud in my ears. I thought about my life upstairs, the job, the routine, the carefully constructed normalcy I'd used to keep the world predictable. I thought about how much of myself had been built on absence without my knowing it. "What happens if I remember everything?" I asked. The woman answered before my sister could. "Then you'll never be able to pretend this was just a house," she said. "Or just a basement. Or just a story. And if I don't?" My sister closed her eyes briefly, like someone bracing for impact. "Then I stay," she said. "And the house keeps you." The implication hit hard. Not physically. Existentially. I understood then that forgetting wasn't freedom. It was a contract. One I'd been honoring without knowing I'd signed it. The house didn't trap people by locking doors. It trapped them by giving them a life that felt whole enough not to question. The woman stepped closer, her voice low and urgent now. "This is the moment most people fail," she said. "They want justice without sacrifice. Truth without cost. But places like this don't work that way." The concrete beneath my knees vibrated again, more violently this time. The crack widened further, and my sister's shoulders became visible, her body straining against the limits of whatever kept her bound. "Naomi," she said, meeting my eyes. "I don't need your life. I need your witness." Something inside me finally broke open. I reached forward slowly, deliberately, ignoring the ache in my muscles, the fear clawing at my spine. My fingers hovered inches from hers. "If I touch you," I whispered, "what happens?" The woman's answer was immediate. "You remember," she said. "And once you do, the house will never let you forget again." My sister's hand trembled, reaching toward mine. Above us, the house groaned, loud, impatient, like it was running out of patience. I closed my eyes. And I made my choice. I touched her. The moment my fingers closed around my sister's hand, the house inhaled. Not metaphorically. Not symbolically. I felt it. The walls vibrated, the air shifted, and a deep, resonant sound traveled upward through the foundation, through the beams, through every room above us, as if the house itself had been holding its breath for decades and had finally decided to let it go. The concrete beneath my knees cracked wider, but there was no collapse, no violence. Just release. Memory came back the way grief does. Not all at once. In waves. I remembered being small. 6 years old. The basement steps too steep for our legs, too dark for comfort. I remembered the two of us down there, playing quietly because we'd been told not to make noise. I remembered the night she slipped, the sound her body made when it hit the concrete, the way she cried for me in a voice that was more confused than afraid. I remembered running upstairs. I remembered my mother grabbing me, shaking me, telling me not to look back. I remembered doctors. Papers. Words like trauma, protective amnesia, necessary intervention. I remembered being told, over and over, that I was an only child. And I remembered believing it. My sister's hand tightened around mine, grounding me in the present as the memories finished stitching themselves back into place. She pulled herself up slowly, the crack in the floor widening just enough to let her emerge, not whole, not broken, just real. When she stood in front of me, trembling, exhausted, undeniably human, I understood something with painful clarity. She had never been trapped. She had been contained. The woman from the grocery store watched us in silence, her expression unreadable. When our eyes met, she gave a small nod, like someone witnessing the final line of a long-awaited story. "It's done," she said quietly. The house responded immediately. The pressure lifted. The basement lights flickered on, steady and warm. The crack in the floor sealed itself, not erasing what had happened, but closing it properly, the way a wound does when it finally heals instead of festering. The air smelled different now, cleaner, lighter, no trace of metal or damp earth. My sister took a shaky breath. "I don't want your life," she said softly. "I just didn't want to be forgotten." I wrapped my arms around her, and for the first time in my life, the emptiness I'd carried without understanding finally had a shape, and then, slowly, it didn't. We didn't stay in the house. Some places serve their purpose and should be left alone afterward. By morning, we were gone. I didn't go back to work. I didn't pack much. The house didn't resist. It didn't need to anymore. Its story had been acknowledged, witnessed, balanced. My sister lives with me now. Not as a ghost. Not as a shadow. As a person rebuilding a life that was interrupted, not erased. Sometimes she wakes up at night, disoriented, afraid she's back there. Sometimes I do too. Healing isn't neat. Memory isn't polite. But we sit together, breathe together, remind each other where we are. The woman from the checkout never called again. I think she knew she wouldn't have to. And the basement? I still think about it sometimes. Not with fear. With respect. Because I learned something I wish I'd known earlier. Some truths don't come to haunt you. They come to be recognized. And the moment you stop running from them is the moment you finally get to leave the house whole.